All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program. You know I'm talking Johnny, Cuba, European roots with that Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. Pick up a six-pack of Johnny. We got college football tonight. Obviously, NFL starts a week from tonight. Go to johnnycuba.us. Use the Johnny locator. Find out the nearest location to you. Make sure you always drink responsibly. And don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. It is Thursday. That means fantasy football. And our pal is Jamey Eisenberg, CBS Sports Fantasy Football expert. Everybody's got to we're down to 1 week left. If you need to do your draft, I don't know what you're waiting for, but we got essentially one more draft preview to help folks out with. Jamey, how are you?
I'm doing great, Zaz. Good to talk to you. I always love when I hear stay tranquilo. It means it's a good day.
So a couple of things, couple of news items let's hit on first for folks who have already had their drafts, or maybe they have theirs coming up. CeeDee Lamb. We're going to do wide receiver tiers today. I know last week we did running back tiers. You came out last week with your wide receiver tier 2.0, so we'll do that here as well. But CeeDee Lamb, he agrees to his contract a couple of days ago. Is there anything that scares you in regards to, okay, he has not been at training camp. He has just a week to wind up getting ready for the season. So, like, let's say McCaffrey goes number 1 overall. Do you say, you know what? I'd rather take one of the other top wide receivers because I'm a little bit afraid of maybe injury situation with CeeDee Lamb.
I'm not afraid of CeeDee Lamb. I just think that Tyreek Hill's a little bit safer with just as much upside. So Tyreek is my first receiver and second overall pick, but Lamb is my third overall pick and second receiver. So if you want to throw the other running backs in there, I have no problem with that with Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall. Hall is my number 2 running back, 4th overall player, Robinson 5th overall player. So if you just want a different build to your fantasy roster, that's certainly a fine diversion from taking one of the receivers. But I think what we saw from CeeDee Lamb in the second half of the season from their bye week on, he was an absolute monster. And that's still on the table for him because the receiving core is really non-existent behind him, just a bunch of guys with an elder Brandon Cooks. And look, Dak's probably going to be throwing as much, if not more, than he ever has because the run game's a little suspect. So I think CeeDee Lamb's in a great spot. If this was a new coordinator, new head coach, and he was holding out, clearly different story if it was a different quarterback. But everything's status quo. So he knows what he's doing. He's ready to go.
In Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin named Russell Wilson the starting quarterback. I can't imagine that Russell Wilson would be a starter for anyone in fantasy football. What does it mean, though, for the talent around him?
I think it's good for the pass catchers. Justin Fields had a great season with Cole Kmet and with DJ Moore. And so, it wouldn't be a complete disaster for him. But I do think Russell Wilson brings a little bit more stability from a throwing standpoint. And so I think you look at it, first off, he will get drafted in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues. So, keep that on the table for him. But in 1 quarterback league, you're right. He's not going to get drafted. I think for Pickens, last year we saw a big play threat in Denver, Cortland Sutton, catch 10 touchdowns with Russell Wilson. He's got, I think, 6 seasons on his resume where a receiver scored 10 plus touchdowns, and challenging down the field will be a good thing for Pickens. So he's a guy you can take in round 4. And then we'll see with Pat Freiermuth. He's really the only other pass catcher that I like for the Steelers. Arthur Smith, who's now the offense coordinator there, former head coach in Atlanta. 34% of the targets last season for the Falcons went to the tight end group. And so that's good for Freiermuth because he has the best pass catching tight end on that team. So those 2 guys are the only receiving options worth drafting. And then the running backs, really nothing was going to change no matter who the quarterback is.
We now also know the starting quarterback for week 1 for every team in the league now because Gerard Mayo also named the starting quarterback as Jacoby Brissett week 1 for New England. Is anyone draftable at the skill position players for New England?
Yeah, I mean, Ramondre Stevenson is a number 2 running back worth taking a look at. Not the best environment because of the quarterbacks and the offensive line, but he's still going to get a lot of work and, we'll work in the passing game. So I'm fine with him not reaching for him, but settling for him in that round 5-6 range as a RB2 at the earliest. And then when you get to the later rounds, the 2 receivers that I tend to look for from the Patriots would be Jalen Polk, the rookie, and Demario Douglas, who's their second-year receiver. So Douglas will play the slot for them, and Polk, I think, has the most upside of the outside receivers, but they're going to mix and match a lot of guys. I mean, it's going to be ugly. Antonio Gibson, the backup running back, also worth a late-round flyer, but I think until we see Drake May, and this is not a knock on Jacoby Brissett, but Brissett, you know what you're getting. He's going to be a little bit more vanilla, whereas May have the opportunity to open things up a little bit because clearly a more explosive type of playmaker. So for the early part of the season, I think it's kind of, a little bit more of a hands-off approach to the Patriots, more guys that you stash on your bench aside from Stevenson.
So, Jamey, if you go to CBSSports.com, you go to fantasy football, Jamey last week. Well, Jamey's coming out with articles every day, but last week, wide receiver tier 2.0. So, let's take a look here and help folks how they should look at wide receivers for their drafts. Tier 1, you have 6 receivers: Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown. Are all 6 of those guys first-round picks?
They are, and you can make a case that Garrett Wilson, could be in this tier also, but I think you know what you're getting from these 6 guys. Now, there's still questions. You asked about CeeDee Lamb and should he still be, in that upper echelon of wide receivers. Justin Jefferson's got a new quarterback, and how much you trust Sam Darnold is probably going to be how much you want to buy into Jefferson as a top 3, 4, 5 receiver. Jamar Chase, we know, is as of yesterday, as of Wednesday, still dealing with his contract situation. Zach Taylor, the head coach in Cincinnati, said he's going to show up, and he didn't. He showed up 15 minutes late in street clothes. So who knows what's going on there? St. Brown, to me, feels like the safest of maybe all of them, aside from Tyreek Hill, because no issues, same quarterback, same coordinator, great schedule. They only play 3 games outdoors, so the Lions' offense is in a perfect spot. And then you get to A.J. Brown, who really tailed off in the second half of the season, and there are some questions on the new coordinator. Kellen Moore is a name we know for the last couple of years. He was in Dallas and then the Chargers last year. Who's going to benefit the most? And is it going to be Brown, or is it going to be maybe Devontae Smith, who is basically a 1A receiver, would be a 1 on most teams, 1A receiver for the Eagles. So there's a little bit of a question mark with A.J. Brown, but I think you look at this group, to me, locked in the first round, and upside for all of them to be 19, 20 plus PPR points per game, which is hard to pass up.
Now, what's the strategy where if you get one of those guys in the first round, should you then take a running back round 2? Or if you have an opportunity to snag one of your tier 2 wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Puka Nacua, Marvin Harrison Jr., or Drake London, would you like to pair up a tier 1 and a tier 2 wide receiver?
I don't mind that, especially in a 3-receiver league. Certainly, PPR would be the most likely scenario where you do that. Half PPR, okay. Never in non-PPR, because you want to get those running backs in that format. It kind of depends on where you pick in the first round, because the Nacua Harrison duo tends to go at the 1-2 turn. So they're typically gone by the first 15 overall picks. I think if you're in the camp of London or Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle, those type of guys, and then you take the next tier and you look at Kupp and Neighbors and that group, you probably don't want to take them early round 3. But because those guys are getting pushed down a little bit in the second round, there's about 7 or 8 running backs that one of them may make it back to you in round 3. So if you want to go receiver, get 2 top 10 guys, let's say you go Jamar Chase and Drake London or Jefferson and Chris Olave, one of those pairings, you may still come back in round 3 and there's James Cook, there's Kenneth Walker, there's Josh Jacobs. It's very realistic to do that. And so I like what's called hero RB build, which is you take one running back in basically the first 6 or 7 rounds, and you lock up your receivers, your quarterback, your tight end, and then you just start throwing a lot of capital at the running back position. So it's not a bad idea to get one of those running backs in round 2 or round 3. But receiver, the first 3 or 4 rounds, there's so many good players. You don't have to go receiver to start your draft.
Tier 3, you have Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Nico Collins. By what round should those 4 guys be gone?
Oh, by round 3. And it's funny because
by the end of round 3 or the start?
Whose last name you said?
Nico Collins.
Yeah, that's early round 3 for me. In some cases round 2. I'm a very receiver heavy. I push those guys up in a lot of drafts this year just because I think that they're so good. The thing that you mentioned, are writing a lot of stories. So Debo's already jumped up a tier. As Brandon Ayuk continues to fall, Debo continues to rise. So Debo's now around a tier 2 guy. But yes, I think these guys are if you take one of the running backs early, so you take one of the top 3 guys, McCaffrey, Hall, or Robinson, I would like to come away with my first 3 after my first 3 picks with 2 receivers. So if I'm going running back first, I'm trying to basically double tap those receivers. So taking a London and then coming back and getting Waddle, or taking Olave and coming back and getting, Deebo Samuel and Nico Collins. I want to come out of my first 3 rounds with 2 receivers, most likely.
In tier 4, you have Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Malik Neighbors, DK Metcalf. That group right there, most everyone, let's say they have a 3 wide receivers you got to start. From that tier 4, from Kupp all the way down to Metcalf, ideally, what number wide receiver should those guys be in tier 4 for you?
So that's basically like wide receivers 16 through 20. the three older guys make me the most nervous. Now there's still plenty of upside for them to be top 10. I don't think, any higher than that, but there's been 63 wide receivers in the last 10 years, so 2014 on, that have started 10 or more games at 31 years old or older. Only 8 of them have finished as top 12 wide receivers, which is number 1 wide receiver. Only 15 have finished in the top 25. So this is the age where we start to see the decline. Kupp is 31, Evans 31, Adams 31. And we saw Adams go from 19 points per game 2 years ago to 15 points per game last year. Kupp obviously has battled injuries the last 2 years. Evans is the one that hasn't fallen off yet, but you want to get off the train before the train goes off the tracks. And so Evans could be the one that gets a little derailed this year as well. So these are 3 guys that I don't tend to draft a lot, but this is the range that they'll go. I'm typically, if you look at average draft position, I'm lower on this trio than most. I don't usually draft a lot of these guys.
And I see here in tier 5, we got names like Devontae Smith, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, George Pickens, Rashee Rice, Michael Pittman Jr., and DJ Moore. By what round does DJ Moore go? Because I feel, if you're snagging DJ Moore as a tier 5 wide receiver, I feel like that's probably really good value.
So it depends on who you talk to. I think DJ Moore was unbelievable last year. And the same thing with Pittman. They're kind of married together for me in a lot of ways, because coming off amazing seasons, career seasons for both of them. But things have changed. For Pittman, for Moore, you asked about him. For Moore, he's gotten 2 very good wide receivers added to his team in a rookie quarterback as well. So while Justin Fields, while Caleb Williams may be a better passer in his rookie season than Fields was last year, and that helps DJ Moore, he was really the only show in town. The number 2 receivers, the number 2 and number 3 receivers for Chicago last year were pretty pitiful, with Darnell Mooney battling injuries. And so you look at it now, Odunze, top 10 overall pick, Keenan Allen, you can make case he's in the conversation to be a Hall of Famer. Just 2 studs essentially that he's going to share the field with. Can he still dominate targets? And I don't think that's the case to the same level. So for me, DJ Moore is a late round 4 pick. Michael Pittman's an early round 5 pick. And these were guys that if you had said nothing had changed, they would be probably, end of round 2, beginning round 3. Pittman I think Anthony Richardson is going to run so much that he's going to take away a little bit from what Gardner Minshew did for Pittman last year.
So for rookie wide receivers, like we already mentioned Malik Neighbors, we already mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr., but Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy, where do you like them? And are there other rookie wide receivers who are going to be worthy of fantasy starting this year?
Yeah, it's really a fun conversation, because Harrison's basically a round 1, round 2 pick. Neighbors is a round 3 pick for me, but he goes anywhere between round 3 and round 6. Those are easily the first 2 guys. 3 through 6, 3 through 7 is a very much up in the air discussion. So for me, it's the things that I look for is who's going to have the opportunity to maybe be their number 1 wide receiver. And I think there's 2 guys that fall in that. I guess maybe 3 with Ladd McConkey, but 2 guys that have the upside to be potential superstars. And that's Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville, because it's an open receiving core right now with the changes that they made with Calvin Ridley gone, and Keon Coleman in Buffalo, just given the situation of no Stephon Diggs, no Gabe Davis. Odunze clearly has the best pedigree, being a top 10 pick and what he did in college. So he's in that conversation also, and then Worthy because of who he's playing with. But I do think we have to take into account that Marquise Brown's banged up right now. At some point, he's coming back early in the season, potentially week 2. How much does Xavier Worthy play? As much upside as he has, I think Andy Reid and the Chiefs well enough. We've all seen them play. They lean on veterans as much as anybody, because some of these younger receivers have struggled until really the second half of the season. So for me, Brian Thomas is the 3rd guy. Odunze is the 4th guy. Coleman's 5th, Worthy 6th. But I don't have any problem if you flip the order and you say, I want Worthy because he's with Mahomes. I want Ladd McConkey even because he could be the number 1 receiver for the Chargers. There's just a wide range of conversation with that group of receivers. For me, I just like what Brian Thomas can do with Trevor Lawrence.
Excellent job, Jamey. Jamey joins us every Thursday here during football season. So starting next week, it's going to be Stardom Sit-em. It's going to be week 1, Jets and 49ers a week from today. Tell everybody how they can catch you leading up to the first week of games. Go ahead.
The easiest place is our YouTube channel, Fantasy Football Today. We just finished our draft-a-thon to raise money for St. Jude. So another year of over $100,000 to help kids, that are in need. It was a great turnout from, everybody who supported that. We appreciate it. But we're on our podcast 5 days a week. You can find me on Twitter at Jamey Eisenberg. And obviously all of my written stuff is at cbssports.com. And let's see, tiers were done. Last round of busts will be finished today. And then we have a fun thing going into the weekend that we do every year. This is our 3rd version of it for this year. It's called a pick by pick series, where 6 of us take 2 picks in a 12-team draft, and we just basically lay out a strategy. So if you have pick 7, you can follow it to a T if you want to. Otherwise, you can say, I don't like what Jamey did here, or what Dave Richard did here, and say, I'm not doing this. I'm going hero RB, 0 RB, 2 running backs back to back. It's a great story that you can use going into your draft if you have that draft slot.
I like that. That's very helpful. I'm looking forward to checking that out. Jamey, excellent job, man. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Good to talk to you.